Welcome to the Daily Boogie.
How about this truth from the New York Times? Let's get into it. Let's get a debate going. Let's have a bit of fun. Trolls are welcome. Insults, comments. Let's rock and roll. New York Times. Mr. Blow. Trump is a racist. Period. End it there. End the article there. There are many more important issues that are being ignored. No doubt. Mike Matthews, thanks for joining us. You'll see this picture here. 4 white guys. I mean, that just nails it home, doesn't it? 4 white guys in suits. Have you ever seen anything more racist? This little collection here. I find nothing more useless than debating the existence of racism. That's the opening line, but guess where we're going in this piece? Just so you know. Just so you know. I hope it backfires and shithole countries get better. Well, it's one way of looking at it. It's very good. The world is full of shitholes, says Wins Alive. Shitheads and shitholes to some degree or another. Yeah, I think that's probably true. That's probably true. Particularly when you are surrounded by evidence of its existence. It feels to me like a way to keep you fighting against the water until you drown. The debates themselves, I believe, render a simple concept impossibly complex, making the very meaning of racism frustratingly murky. Yes, I know that feeling. I was reading an article not long ago that said farmers' markets are a manifestation of white supremacy. And, you know, Periscope not long ago, we read an article that went over why civility, you know, being nice to people, being cordial, is also a manifestation of white power. So I can understand why some people, earnestly and with humility, find themselves now confused by the concept of racism, including Charles M. Blow. He's only human, right? He's only human. It is frustratingly murky. Racism is simply the belief that race is an inherent and determining factor in a person's or a people's character and capabilities, rendering some inferior and others superior. These beliefs are racial prejudices. Okay. Determining factor in a person's or a people's character and capabilities. I grew up a big fan of the NBA. Most of the NBA players are black. Do they have superiority over the white guys when it comes to basketball? Is that a racist thing to say? Apparently. Apparently. One of my favourite movies as a kid was White Men Can't Jump. Do you remember that? Woody Harrelson, Wesley Snipes. Great flick. Great flick if you've never seen it. It's a classic. It's an absolute classic. You know, white men can't jump. I mean, that's clearly racist. Clearly. The history of America is one in which white people used racism and white supremacy to develop a racial caste system that advantaged them and disadvantaged others. Understanding this, it is not a stretch to understand that Donald Trump's words and deeds over the course of his life have demonstrated a pattern of expressing racial prejudices that demean people who are black and brown and that play to the racial hostilities of other white people. Those hostilities. It is not a stretch to say that Trump is racist. It is not a stretch to say that he is a white supremacist. New York Times, ladies and gentlemen. It is not a stretch to say that Trump is a bigot. Okay? This was the day before. This was Sunday this came out, I believe. Those are just facts. Okay, so we've gone from it's not a stretch to say that Trump is a racist to that's now fact. Those are just facts. Supported by the proof of the words that keep coming directly from him. And when he is called out for his racism, his response is never to ameliorate his rhetoric, but to double down on it. Yes. Because as we all know, when someone accuses you of being a racist, the very first thing you should do is apologise profusely, and that will make the name calling go away. Obviously. The best thing to do when confronted with someone who is angered, who believes you are a white supremacist, who believes you unfairly target people of colour and other minorities, the absolute best thing you can do is apologise profusely. Actually, never stop apologising. That's your best bet. And rest assured that will make all the name calling just go away. And you will be welcomed back into the bosom of peaceful, harmonious society as best we can know it. I mean, I lost count of the amount of cities that burned when Barack Obama was president. That obviously had nothing to do with racism. All of those riots. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they don't know the meaning of the word. I mean, come on now, this is the times. These people are experts tomorrow. We mustn't doubt them. Racism and racist are simply words that have definitions, as opposed to all those ones that don't have definitions. And Trump comfortably and unambiguously meets those definitions. We have unfortunately moved away from the simple definition of racism to the point where the only people to whom the appellation can be safely applied are the vocal, violent, racial archetypes. Those violent racial archetypes, ladies and gentlemen. That's the complicated version of racism, according to Mr. Blow. Racism doesn't require hatred, constant expression, or even conscious awareness. Yes. Unconsciously racist, ladies and gentlemen. We want racism to be fringe rather than foundational. But wishing isn't an effective method of eradication. Interesting that. Wishing isn't an effective method of eradication. I don't know why we got to this point and now wishing isn't okay. Because once upon a time we used to just wish for harmony. We would wish for the debt to go away. We wish that everybody around the world viewed people as we view them. Oh, Mr. Bearded Truth, thanks for joining us. We wish that one day we will wake up in a harmonious and utopian racial superstate where all peoples and cultures live side by side. Interestingly enough, the holiday for which the gentleman for which this holiday is named after, he had a dream. It wasn't a wish, he had a dream. But here we are 40 odd years later. And the president is a racist, period. According to the New York Times. So wishing doesn't work. Quite correct. Quite correct. First and foremost, although Trump is not the first president to be a racist, we must make him the last. Garnering support here. Everyone wants to pass judgment. Please be careful about this. I'll be very careful. I'll assume the emotional needs of the audience are like landmines, so I will keep my feet firmly tucked within the hovercraft. First and foremost, although Trump is not the first president to be racist, we must make him the last. If by some miracle he should serve out his first term, he mustn't be allowed a second. Voters of good conscience must swarm the polls in 2020. But before that, those voters must do so later this year to rid the House and the Senate of as many Trump defenders, apologists, and accomplices as possible. Should the time come where impeachment is inevitable, there must be enough votes in the House and Senate to ensure it. There you go. Call to arms. Remove the racist and don't let it ever happen again. How do we achieve this? Put the Democrats back in. Put the Democrats back in. We must put the Democrats back in post-haste to prevent another racist calamity entering the White House. As the brilliant James Baldwin once put it, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. When I see that in poll after poll, a portion of Trump's base continues to support his behaviour, including on race, I can only conclude that there is no real daylight between Trump and his base. They are part of his racism. There you go, ladies and gentlemen, Trump supporters, Trump voters. You are now merely a statistic in Trump's racially biased, evil makeup. You are a stat. You are part of Trump's racism. It fuels you. You fuel him. It's a symbiotic relationship of hate, ladies and gentlemen. You need to be aware of it. The Clinton plantation spilleth over, says Wins Alive. Ernie Banks, thanks for joining us. Love the price. Net drag picks up on it. I'm not paying for this. I'm not subscribing to this. When I see the extraordinary hypocrisy of elected officials who either remain silent in the wake of Trump's continued racist outbursts or who obliquely condemn him, only to, in short order, return to defending and praising him and supporting his agenda, I see that there is no real daylight between Trump and them either. They too are part of his racism. The list is building, boys and girls. Trump supporters are part of his race. Just as a side note, this may be, an irrelevant point, but can anyone tell me what it means to be part of someone else's racism? Do you not have your own thoughts and free will? Can you not be a racist on your own? I guess that's the question. It was up to Trump who Mel Blanc. No, it was Mr. Blow. Mr. Charles M. Blow. I'm sure an award-winning journalist or of some kind, of some description. This is BS, says Mike Matthews too. Oh, come on, Mike. Surely, don't you see the great points and the great arguments being put forward here? Everyone is racist. When you see it this way, Charles M. Blow's way, just quietly, when you see it his way, you understand the enormity and the profundity of what we are facing. There were enough Americans who were willing to accept Trump's racism to elect him. There are enough people in Washington willing to accept Trump's racism to defend him. Not only is Trump racist, the entire architecture of his support is suffused with that racism. Racism is a fundamental component of the Trump presidency. That's squeezing a lot of racism into one paragraph. I'm almost triggered by the amount of racism and racists that are mentioned in that final paragraph. Just to send us off on a high note, What am I going to do for the last paragraph? You're a racist, he's a racist. The entire architecture of his support is suffused with racism. Racism is a fundamental component of the Trump presidency. Well, for people who don't think much, it's hard work. They are easily led astray. Well, that's true. It's true. It's very true indeed. I made this point the other day, and I think I'll make it again. This talk about, and Tony the Fairies joined us. Thanks for joining us, Tony. Good to see you again, brother. People have pontificated on the potential that Oprah Winfrey might run for president in 2020. I'm not sure she will. Get to the part where the anvil falls on the coyote, says Lynn. Tamara says, the only response to a progressive calling me racist is, fuck you. So that's my response. Fair enough. Very succinct. Very succinct. It's very difficult to crowbar some kind of oppression out of that, I think. I think it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, so people have been talking about Oprah running in 2020. I don't think she particularly will. But I see, and I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be told that I'm wrong, but I just see this whole identity politics technique dividing, everything's racist. I only see it imploding in 3 years from now. I really do. You know, you're essentially, you're trying to win the votes of people who work together. You know, they drive each other to the airport, they help each other move, their neighbours, their friends, and they flick on the TV at night and there's another politician telling them how everybody around them hates them, how they should hate everybody around them, or how they hate everybody and everybody hates them. And I think people get to work at the morning and say, did you see what that politician said about, you know, how we're all oppressing you and stuff? And it's like, yeah, I did see that. Fucking idiot. You know, there's more of that than there is, I think, this sort of academically driven, far left, you know, theoretical world. The theoretical world, the world for a professor in a theoretical world of oppression and power systems and identity politics is far removed from, you know, the two guys who get a beer after they've been salting sidewalks. It's a disconnected unreality to an extent. It's a world lived in textbooks, explained to old children / young adults. And the people who live in those textbooks fawn over each other's theses and hypotheses about the world. And they have very little connection with the world outside of the faculty, so to speak.